You probably think that coal, steel, gas, energy, fertilizer, oh my God, these are boring topics. Although I have to admit, I saw so many of you frantically trying to find an outlet to charge their phones, so maybe you did change your mind over the last couple of minutes. But in my preparation for this speech, I always try to keep up with celebrities, and today is a day where I feel like a celebrity almost with all the police protection that they have dispatched for my personal security. I always keep up with what Greta Thunberg is doing. She's now no longer a teenager, so I can mock her endlessly, but I'm also curious at what she's doing. And over the last couple of weeks, I had to write it down because I was losing track a little bit. She was arrested at an anti-capitalist protest, at a coal mine, at an anti-Israel protest, and my favorite one, at an anti-wind farm protest. So from anti-capitalism to environmentalism to anti-Israel to anti-environmentalism, she basically covers all the bases. But I find this always interesting because what she is and what she stands for is a broader symptom of something that we also experience today. The problem that we have, both in the energy sector, in the economic sector, but also in the cultural and political sector, is that we very often fight battles. The left is always fighting a war. They don't try to win small areas. They don't try to win small legislative areas, as Nigel Farage said before. If we win one victory, they have 50 other ways to win. And I think this is something we also have to internalize. This is also, by the way, a reason why many on the left have no problem climbing into bed with, let's say, less than savory political, cultural actors of any kind, shape, or form, because they want to push for their ideology, and they see that the means justify the ends. We don't do this, but I think there are times and moments when we probably have to take a page out of their book. Now, this brings me to the most important part. When we talk about culture, I think we misunderstand what that truly means. A true culture is signified by the things that we do without knowing that we do it. It's like if we would be goldfish with hopefully a somewhat longer memory, it's like the waters in which we swim. We just take it in, we no longer realize it. And many of the things that struck me in the energy crisis of the last couple of years is the extent to which we have declared war on the things that make the modern world possible. How we have declared war on farming, on fertilizer, on energy, on industry. And I want to exemplify this a little bit, both for entertaining reasons, but also to make my point. A little bit if I look at what mainstream media, but also the arts and cinema has brought to us over the last couple of years. Now, I know that there are probably many fans of Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings among us. As I see one young gentleman nodding, okay, good. So personally, I have to admit, I always find the orcs were the more interesting people in the whole story. Obviously not for the reasons of their political agenda or their skincare routine, but what I really liked about them was they were the guys who had industry, right? They were the guys who did mass production. They were the guys who were cutting down forests, smelting iron, they were doing mining, they were all the things doing that makes a modern world possible. Now, I understand that this might seem weird at the first glance, but let me give you a reason why I think this is important. What we have seen over the last 2 years is that two countries, Russia and China, right, despite when it comes to GDP, not being as powerful maybe as the United West, that when it comes to war, they are very effective. And why is that so? Because they have energy and they have industry. And when you go to war, those are the things that matter. And this is something we have overlooked. As intriguing as the elves and the humans in Lord of the Rings might be, I believe in the real world, it would have been the orcs who would carry away victory. Now, we all know how Lord of the Rings ends. The orcs are defeated because, as far as I remember, speaking trees are fighting against them, which seems more realistic than the plans the EU has with their green agenda, although it's not entirely dissimilar. Then I was watching another movie in a similar direction, which was Avatar. I liked it very much because the main protagonists are blue, so I thought they might be AfD voters if they would be German. Turns out they were not. And they spoke very posh English. And they were up against what I could only identify as MAGA Republican supporters from Alabama. So I watched the entire movie and tried to figure out, so what are the bad guys in Avatar actually doing? And it turned out they represented a mining company. I thought, a mining company, that sounds pretty bad. Now let me tell you, mining is about as old as agriculture. None of you in this room would be here if it wouldn't be for mining. It is, unfortunately, if you want, the burden of human existence that civilization can only exist if we wrestle it away from the earth. This is how it has always been. There is this weird and odd idea that I found in The Lord of the Rings, that I found in Avatar, that tries to tell us that true human nature is living in harmony with nature. I don't think that's the case. I love nature as much as most of you do, but let's be very open about this. Nature wants to kill you, always and everywhere. And it is the fact that we can dominate nature, that we can control it, that we are in fact not dead. Now let me be clear. Does this mean that I want to see a mine, that I want to see agriculture, that I want to see a steel smelter everywhere? Absolutely not. But if you take a close look, why do you think it is that the most industrialized societies take also the best care of their environment? The reason is very simple. You have to sacrifice a small part of the environment so you can save all of it. And this is, I think, something else that we need to realize. Which brings me to my last point, another very important pop culture reference I cannot resist from making, which is Star Wars, of course. Now, you will not be surprised that I tell you that I always had sympathies for the Empire. I generally have a soft spot for empires, particularly of the Austro-Hungarian kind, but that's a separate conversation I'm happy to have, especially with my Hungarian friends. So, I have to admit, I always thought, isn't the most interesting part of the whole Star Wars universe the civilization that built the Death Star? Now, I admit that the use of it is somewhat problematic, but my God, the technology behind it is absolutely amazing. So I don't know if any one of you knows Elon Musk, probably not, but if they do, please pass on my pitch to him that I would like to restart the whole Star Wars thing and just focus on the guys who built the Death Star. We could call it, I don't know, Oppenheimer in space or something like that. I think that'd be quite interesting, because I have a feeling that if Disney stays in charge of the Star Wars universe, the next one we're going to see is Luke Skywalker and Han Solo being in a same-sex relationship, waiting for Chewbacca having his transgender operation, while Darth Vader and the Stormtroopers are in DEI training, learning that galaxies, red dwarfs, black holes, and white giants are very, very complicated terms, and we should no longer use them. So I think this is something we should also take a look into. But why am I saying this? Partially because I hope I'm funny, but more importantly than this is because it shows you how much of our environment has been infused with certain ideas that we just take for granted. Right? This is just how it is. There are certain narratives, if you excuse that word, which I usually hate, that prevail, that are so pervasive, that I think we have to be careful that what I call, that we don't make the mistake of the Judith Butlerization of what we try to achieve. What I mean by this is that we become so intellectual, that we become so smart, right? That we become so sophisticated that we no longer reach the areas of life that touch on everyday people experiences. People go to movies, people read books, people consume pop culture, and these are the levels of power we have constantly neglected. There is one saying I always like, which is, there's a difference between being in office and being in power. And let me make an example. We are here in Brussels. The European Parliament on paper is dominated by the conservative parties. Now, where are all these conservatives, right? Where have they been? They are in office, but are they truly in power? Is there any place west of the Danube where right-wing conservative movements are truly in power? And there's another final point why I think this is very important. You cannot beat something with nothing. And whatever you think about the left, whatever you think about the absurdities of the left, whatever you think about the absurdities of left-wing environmentalism, about the Green Deal, about anti-nuclear, about all these things, they do believe it. Right? This is a huge difference. This is something that they pursue. They have an ideology that they are willing to pursue. The question is, do we have something similar? Do we have a program? Do we have an idea that can oppose this? And I think this is a key question. And this brings me to my last point. So what is the left truly after? My sincere belief is, and I hope that my kind of pop culture references highlighted this a little bit, I think they are at war with the pillars of Western civilization. I think they are at war with modern life. I do think they hate industry. I do think they hate energy. I do think they hate all the things that make modern life possible. I do understand that sometimes, and feel free to correct me later on in the remarks, that even on the right, these ideas have some sympathy. The idea that life before modernity was easier, that life before industrialization was easier. And again, that's a fine position. But most people don't view it that way. Most people want the comforts of modern life. And we saw this, by the way, in recent weeks and recent months. What made the right in Germany strong? The fact that the government wants to tell them what kind of heating system to use. What made nuclear energy a focus of attention once again? The fact that people realized that high energy bills are really bad. And I think this is something we always have to keep in mind, that whatever ideology we have, whatever ideas we present, they must connect to the experiences of the everyday people. They simply do not have the time, they do not have the attention to focus on the highly philosophical conversations that we like to have. And neither should they, because those are the people that keep things running. Now, what do I mean by this? My last recommendation, maybe we can make this happen one day. I always hear articles about drag queen story hours and about, transgender issues happening in schools. And I'm as much against this as you are. But why do we never have coal miners story hour in the schools? Why don't we ever have oil rig worker in the schools? Why don't we have programs that set school kids on farms for a couple of months, that sends them to work in a mine, to view a mine, to see a mine? These are amazing testaments to human ingenuity, to human technology. They are awesome. If you ever visit a copper mine, I promise you, you leave a changed person. It's absolutely amazing to see what human beings can do. But we no longer tell our kids those stories. We no longer expose them to these kind of things. And I think this is something we have to take care of, right? We can only beat something, you cannot beat something with nothing. And it is the nothing that we have to find an answer to. Thank you very much.